Hi, I'm Wendy, and this is Wendy's Coffee House. Thank you for tuning in. All right, we've had the eclipse, and we're going to have coming up another big eclipse, solar eclipse. All of this stuff in terms of astrology talks about change. I don't follow astrology as much as I do the information I get from my guides. And so I'm going to talk about how that started and what's important to know about your own self in terms of your own intuition, your own guidance, whether it's spiritual or if you're following someone else who is a mentor. There are a lot of different passage ways that we can turn down on our path, on our journey. And there are teachers, some in a physical form and others in many different non-forms. Our goal is to continue, no matter what it looks like on the outside, listening to that insight. Because when you follow that, you are always on the right path. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says, because they aren't part of your curriculum. What they're doing is giving you feedback and a reflection to give you the ability to see where you are on your journey. So if somebody is having an argument with you, then that's you arguing with yourself. And what comes from that is your next move, your reaction, and your, in some way, shape, or form, projection. So here we go. The nightlights. In 1997, I started having this interactive experience with nightlights. The kitchen light in a house that my husband at the time, that we were redoing, remodeling, it was an automatic nightlight, so it should go on and off when someone enters the room. Well, it did more of that when there was nobody entering the room, when the sun wasn't flickering or coming through the windows, it would go on and off all by itself. And I looked, at first I was thinking, well, okay, there has to be something making this happen. There's something that I'm missing. And then I watched, and it did it when other people were around. No one noticed it. It's like part of the framework that we just assume everything is the way it's supposed to be and don't pay any attention to it. It's nightlight. It comes on and off with light. That's the way it works. Okay, so when I figured out that wasn't the way it worked, then I started becoming aware of possible ways I could figure out what was happening. And one of those ways is actually dowsing. And my mom was a very big help with this because she started dowsing to figure out what was happening. We sat in front of the light, and I had 2 or 3 night lights at that time that I noticed the activity with. And if I sat close to the light, it would do that behavior. And then with the cats, I had cats that would come up, and they would also affect the light. With that dowsing experience, then there was an indication that, yes, this is something else, this is another entity, and I could experiment more. So I began to automatic write, and on the computer, sit down, and then it came through just very, very quickly. So quickly I couldn't get it all down if I tried to sit there and think about it. I wasn't thinking, it was just stream of consciousness. And it also used language, and I've had people say, well, you know language, the words, that's just part of your English, whatever. You should know those words. Well, they aren't words I typically use, so that was my clue. And if you've channeled before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it's nothing frightening. It's just a matter of you kind of disassociate from what your thoughts are, or shut your own thoughts down and allow this other thought form, this pattern, this information flow to come through. And the first thing I was given was, do not correct the typos. Just get through it. Because I think, I've got to make it perfect. But then, of course, that takes too much time. The other thing about that is it involves you thinking. And when you're thinking, then you cut that thread of contact. So what I will do is put on the Nightlights, Talking to Nightlights blog. This is on WordPress. I'll put this information on that blog, so you can Google it, Talking to Nightlights, WordPress, or talkingtonightlights.com. I'll put it already is, I believe it's already linked on that log, the video of what this nightlight does. And actually, this is a different nightlight. It's been on for about, at least 20 years. I think we're going into 25 years with all this. But one of the other lights I originally used burned out, and 2 or 3 of them have have gone on. This one is a long haul, a trooper. The thing is, when I first started doing this automatic writing, dictation, downloads, whatever term you want to use, you question. If I'm making this up, why? What's the point? What's the purpose? Where is it coming from? And when I ask, it refused to have any kind of name. I could get somebody from Orion or Pluto or Neptune or Jupiter or the Pleiades. I'd already had contacts. At one point, I've had other experiences throughout my life, and intuitive contacts and telepathic, a presence that gives me information or sometimes saves my life. This was a discovery of 7 dolls, Madame Alexander dolls, in a trash bag at the bottom, in the basement of a house, a fourplex, that we were at that time going through and trying to clean out. And I found this trash bag, which is why it had been there. It looked like a trash bag. The dolls were beautiful, 7 sisters. And at that point, I had been given this clue about the 7 sisters. And then in the basement, here's this trash bag, open up, there are the 7 dolls, 7 sisters, Pleiades. So that's been this kind of prompt that I get with certain things, that it doesn't have to be a full sentence or a paragraph, it's just kind of a clue of what's coming. And so with that information, I kind of listen to this other stuff that I'm getting and try and figure out, okay, where are we going with this? And some of it is just a matter of saying that we are always connected and we are always able to get help when it's needed. And it is an intuition, it is an insight, it is an inner knowing. And where it comes from, it depends on what it's about, because there are others that we don't see around us all the time. And I remembered being a kid when I was thinking, somebody's always watching. Who's watching? Where are they? Why are they here? And then I realized, okay, it's not just one, it's more, and it's others. And my connections with other elementals, fairies, that kind of stuff, ETs. This stuff is, it's different for each of us, but it says that we have a wider scope that we can tune into when we are willing and trusting enough to allow ourselves to explore. And that's what this is about. So the nightlights, how they work, the video will be on the website. Again, that's talkingtonightlights.com. Now, the cool thing about this, with these kinds of shows, you don't have to have a whole lot of production. It's just a conversation between me and you. Or I should say you and I. Okay, that's my mom, a teacher. Don't say me and you, because it sounds like you're calling somebody mean. Thanks, Mom. Just in case she's listening. You know how moms are. Okay, but the joy that I always had with talk radio was the connection, especially when you were listening overnight. There's something about nobody else being up, you're all alone, and something's going on out there. I remember listening to music and finding different radio stations that would come in and that were on the very edge of the listening, whatever your range was for that station, and feeling like I had found something exotic, because they didn't play the same songs that were played in my area. And I thought it would be so wonderful to be a DJ, because you would have access to all that music. And then I thought I would never want to work in a box, because you are closed, you're confined, and it would be very claustrophobic. And I had grown up in the country, outside, and riding horses and swimming in creeks and playing outside, wandering, doing make-believe things outside. And my dolls all played underground, because that's where dolls lived. Consequently, they were dirty. They took baths. But I always had that thing of everything I did was going to be outside. And so then I ended up doing radio, which, when you say you're never going to do something, then that I have learned is a very, very strong energy point. So the word never is like a really big attachment. I've decided never is probably a good word for me to avoid. I could say maybe, not intentionally, something like that. So with all of this, though, the intuition and the other experiences with the paranormal are part of it. So with that nightlight experience, then I started working with my guides, consciously working with the guides, and knowing that there's information was going to involve me learning a whole different lingo and a whole different way of being, and understanding what my mind was doing. And if I was trying to make more of something, the first thing was to avoid trying to make it make sense. Avoid trying to, in some way, describe or define it, because I didn't know enough about it to define it. And that's what the guides and the energy told me at the beginning, again, when I tried to put a name with it, and it just said the energy. Energy. And so the nightlights became the energy. And that's what I wrote about in the book, Talking to Nightlights. But that's been so long ago that it involved so much more just basics of me understanding how my body worked, how my brain worked, how I could do this and become more fluent in listening and paying attention. And so that was a learning curve. And when it comes to channeling, because I do channel, the first year with this nightlight encouraging me and my guides also stepping in. At that point, I had asked to see them. I wanted to see what they look like. And I had no idea what to expect. But I was given this wonderful presentation of two round, glowing, about basketball size orbs. That's the word that we call them. But they're glowing like little round cloud type things. And they were kind of an orangish orange red. And that's what I saw physically. And so, okay, that's what you look like. And later on, I've asked, well, what do we look like to ghosts and others out there? Well, we look like that. We look like balls of light, orbs. So when you're seeing an orb somewhere, that might be you. And at least you from somebody else's perspective, which I thought was really funny, because here we attach all these things of, an orb. It's exotic. Oh, it's really spectacular. It's cool. Well, that's what we are without the body. And when I have done out-of-body travels and things like that, I have seen myself in that space. And I was shown during a meditation, and this is back in 97. I'm trying to think. That's when the nightlight started. 10 years before would have been 87, and I think that's about the time I had the out-of-body experience where I was in 3 places at once. I was meditating, and when I was meditating, I just popped out, and I'm up on the ceiling, looking down at the body on the bed, and thinking, well, this is cool. Oh. But the third part was this glowing yellow ball, basketball size, above my solar plexus, my stomach, on the bed. I could see that. And from that vantage point, I could see my face directly beneath me. I could see my body. So I realized in that state, being out of body, up, hovering near the ceiling, and in that glowing orb, and still having sight, that I am basically 3, the Trinity, triune. I thought, this is mind-blowing. And I didn't know what to do with it. But I knew it had happened, and that we are more than just this physical source, that we have so much more to learn about these non-physical elements that are also part of us. And that's why energy work is so helpful, because it allows you to engage that and get out of the mind, get out of that thinking. And it's been referred to as the monkey mind. Well, there's a reason, because it's constantly going. The deal with it is it's constantly us either judging or criticizing or contemplating, planning. It's always, there's something for it to do. And as I was walking around today thinking about what I was going to do, I bit the inside of my cheek thinking, because I got distracted. Now that was new, but it was a way of saying and showing me something that I could contextualize, that I could put into words, I could integrate, that was a sense and a reminder, that it's very here and now, present, when you experience something physically. So that was a way of giving me a demonstration of, this is what happens when you multitask and you get off task. There are things that can just cascade into activities or actions that you don't intend and you don't really want. But for me, that was a moment that I could say, okay, this is what it's like when we are doing too many things and overtaxing that system, because something is it's juggling. You drop a ball. So going back to determining what to call and how to work with the nightlight. The energy is the name, the nightlight, whatever it is. And it isn't a one, it's a multi. So when I started channeling, I worked for 1 year, just myself and someone who was helping me, who would hypnotize me, help me. Self-hypnosis was what eventually happened. But to count down and disconnect. And so 1 year of doing that and becoming very comfortable and fluid in that. And at that point, as a demonstration, the guide said, we're going to count to 2. Now, this is the person across from me giving the instruction as I'm speaking it, and that person has hypnotized me, that I'm saying, we're going to count to 2, knowing that this is the information I'm getting. I'm saying it out loud and doing that so that I have a witness and somebody else to corroborate what's happening with me. And that was super helpful. So, and I'm thinking at the time, because that's what happens as you do this, there's a part of you as a conscious channel that is there potentially censoring things. You try not to do that, but that can happen, potentially censoring things. And so as I'm making the call on this, we're going to count to 2, telling me that I would have, they're going to show me something at count to 2. And I'm thinking, what can you possibly show me in the count of 2? And that, the little 2-year-old, I don't want to. Okay, so there's the 1, nothing happens. There's the 2, gone. Totally, completely, wow. I'm no longer, this is, the mind doesn't take this in, but the essence, the soul, the consciousness, you all of a sudden are connected to everything. I felt like butter, just melted everything into all that is. And this is like bliss. I don't know how many words you have for this, but they're not enough. And so it was exquisite. It was fantastic. It was orgasmic. It was just no way to bring that into words that give it the complete and total measure. So there it is. That was 2. And I realize I have to come back. I don't want to come back. I have no choice, because I also know a part of me that if I stay there, then I have split from this body, and it can cause something that I don't want. And so I come back, and my the person who's hypnotizing me said, "What was that?" Because they had no idea, nothing. All of a sudden, I'm just quiet. And gone and back. That's no drugs, okay? Absolutely none. No caffeine, nothing. So that's how easy it is, especially when you're working with these non-corporeals, these others. And people are curious, well, is it an ET thing? Is it a ghost thing? I don't have the knowledge base to be able to put a word and a label on it. And I have been instructed to avoid that. Now, it helps us when we have labels, because then we can say, okay, this was an ET, this was a transformative spiritual event, this is something, a spirit guide, this is the Archangel Michael, this is, well, it can be all that. But if I limit it by giving it a label, I stop asking questions. And I have to keep asking questions if I want to know more. And if I want to expand and evolve and ascend. I cannot stop with a label. And I'm sorry, I cannot give you a label. But the clue about this is we each have our own ability to access these kinds of experiences, levels of consciousness. and you just find a technique, a path, a guide to assist you going forward from here in the next break. Wendy's Coffee House. Okay, so if you're looking for a spiritual assist, a spirit guide, and wanting to go forward with that, once you decide that's what you want to do, in your environment, you will have others show up. You will have triggers. My first tarot book that I got was an interesting book because, and it's the angel cards. I tried to talk with the woman who created those before she died, and it was just within a 6-month window to get the interview and tell her, when I found your angel cards, it was an interesting moment because what happened, the deck that went with the angel cards had a signature card, a card. There were 2 of that. It was a mistake. There were 2 of that card in the deck, and it was the one I was working with at the time. So it was a clue. A breadcrumb, and that took me in that direction. So the full year of working with somebody to help me get into the state where I could channel and be distracted and disconnected and detached enough to allow it to come through without trying to stop it. The next year, working with females because I'm comfortable with women and learning to understand the difference between male and female, the guides suggested and instructed the year for that. And before I started all this, I went into 18 weeks of trying to get my vibration, my frequency, my energy. I went into energy work and had past life memories and things like that. Other out-of-body experiences where I was shown my blocks. And again, my guides threw me out of my body. I'm all of a sudden back. And it, I don't know. It was a black void, and the only thing I could see in that place was this little around a circle of color, and the color was I could just what I'd say was like an egg. It was white around the edge, and then the color in the center, and that's all I could see. And I realized that's the only thing that existed. All this other stuff around me, the couch I was sitting on, my girlfriend I brought just in case I needed another witness and somebody who could help ground me, along with that hypnotherapist, a shaman. That was another case of reminding me that this physical is just temporary. It's just right now. It's a vehicle. It's the vessel that we are working with at the time that gets us from point A to point B, with little lessons along the way, and occasional stops for chocolate or cheesecake, depending on what your preference is. So those things happened as I was preparing, and that was basically in the first year. Okay, so the second year working with women, so once a week, having a session where women were present doing channeling and getting information, and also working with as you channel, you're opening up to other essences, other thought forms, other beings, other dimensions. And so I learned that working with the lower level entities, sometimes you get for me, an energy block at the tailbone, because it's a lower level entity, so it comes through there, and so there's a little bit of a backlash for me, that reminded me, okay, this is a lower level essence, and this is where they're comfortable, this is where they reside, and I really don't want to stay there. They're also cantankerous, and they put on good shows, and they have personalities. And I need to stop there. Is what I don't need to continue working with that level. So, but it was a learning curve too, because that can bring you through some negative energy. And to keep doing that, you just keep lightening yourself and changing your thoughts, so you don't attract it, magnify it, and in some way, shape, or form become stuck in that way of being and seeing. So the next year, so it's year number 3, working with males. And so having, and there's, gathering of 8 to 10 people, it gradually became a few more. And then the first public appearance as a channel was for an ions group. And that group, I had become more comfortable working with men and women. The difference for me when channeling, females are not as, they don't have a reach, energetic reach, the same that men do. If I would sit in front of a female, she was in her space, inhabiting her space. If I sat in front of a male, he was inhabiting his space and mine. Like, okay, all right, that's enough, back off. But that's the energy. And so the male energy, the masculine energy for me was much more dynamic, and I had to understand there was nothing wrong with that. That is the way it projected. And so to be comfortable with that, to be able to channel in front of groups, I needed to understand there were differences. And then working with people one-on-one, that this is a different type of personality as well. So because we have so much more going on that is beyond this physical that we carry with us all the time. It's like, some people have tons and tons of baggage, and it's not all theirs. They're carrying it for other people. And in some ways, that's a favor. But it's also a disservice, because sometimes we have to do our own stuff. And so someone will take your bags for you because they are trying to help you. In the meantime, you're not aware that that's work you need to do. This is getting too deep. But just an idea that there's more than just the physical form. And when you're working as a channel, as an intuitive, even as a psychic, that you're going to experience some of these things, and you really don't want to take them with you. So if they come and they drop their bags in front of you, and you kindly ask that they take their bags with them, because it's not your work, it's theirs. And that can be a bit taxing, and you get tired doing that kind of work for too many people. And so for me, working in crowds, it's like, it can be exhausting if I don't shut some of that off and say, it's not time right now. I'm off the clock. Yeah. So, but I didn't understand that. I would go into stores and places like that, and my hands, cross my hands, and I didn't realize I was protecting myself. It wasn't, I wasn't being standoffish. I wasn't being rude. I was being self-preserving. I don't need all this stuff. And working with people in retail, there were people who would come up to the register, and I knew the minute my register shut down and froze that the person who was across from me was a very hardcore, heavy-duty, grounded person. Black is black, white is white, and there's no gray. Okay, fine. You shut down my register. Let's take a moment. Take 5. Yeah. And then, of course, that kind of personality is not happy when things go awry. And so they're stewing, and you're trying to hurry things along at the same time getting more information than you need. But remember, there are people like that around you all the time who do pick up on your thoughts, who do have an idea about what's going on with you. Whether they share it or not, that's another story. It isn't always something that you need to share or that you can share. It's just an observation you make and you go on. Unless it's life-threatening. And then that's when it's like, okay, I'm going to take a chance and give you a piece of information and go from there. So with that, it opened up a new realm. And of course, as I'm trying to ground myself and integrate this information that's coming through with the nightlight and giving me all sorts of information, it was a matter of what it tuned into, what other elements were at play. I had taken some classes in Raku, and was wonderful because I could I could ground myself, put the hands in the clay, think about other things, and create. And at one point, someone died, and this was a friend of the people, the women who were in this Raku group, and were outside, and they decided to do some chanting and singing as the kiln is going and the things are being fired. And the chanting and singing they were doing, I don't remember the words, I don't remember what it was. I remember all of a sudden I felt this infusion. And with this infusion, as we're dancing and singing and chanting, I had the chords and I had the rhythm, and I could sing, and I was clapping, I believe, making some kind of a rhythmic noise. I don't think I had a drum, but I was in sync. I was in tune. I was in key. And it wasn't me. it was this energy, this entity that came into me, and it was magical. So here I am in this group. I don't know these people very well. It's just we had a good relationship, and I was making pottery, and I enjoyed it. And the person that they were honoring, that they loved, and that they were remembering seemed to be present. And that probably, I think, about 10 or 15 minutes was how long that lasted. And then when that energy left, I couldn't find the clue, the key, the cadence, the rhythm. So I stopped. It was like, when it stopped, it stopped. And then it was, could be more than embarrassing. But I remember feeling, oh, I missed, and I realized it was gone. It was gone. But that was a magical moment. The other not so magical moment was moving into a duplex and finding out that the previous tenant was still there and trying to make an impact by being inside me, because he couldn't get my attention any other way. He scared the cat. Well, we were gone for a mini vacation, came home. The cat had stayed in one spot in the house, left a whole ball of white fur in that spot because he wouldn't go anywhere else. A shelf fell off the wall. Nothing broke, just hit me on the head. There were several and I would wake up, I would hear it one tone, like a chime, one tone. And at one point, I had my feet off the bed or at the end of the bed, uncovered, and it felt like something like a finger or something took my toe and bent it over. When I figured out that this was a ghost was when I woke up and I was making a noise, and this noise was coming, and I thought, somebody's trying to talk. And that's when I figured out. So then we started asking questions about the previous tenant and found out he was a suicide and incredibly obsessive compulsive. And that person had been in this apartment complex and had seen his closet, and everything was very, like an inch between every hanger, and so fastidious in that way. So when I finally make the connection and find out that this person is stuck and wants to leave and is really frustrated with me because I am too dense to get it, I did some fast-paced catching up, and this is before I started channeling. So my catching up was understanding that I needed to give him a boost and assist and energy to help him go to the light. And when his folks came to get him, they were all very nice and pleasant. He was still a curmudgeon, a cantankerous, and not very happy with me because he wasn't on my radar. All right, well, my radar has expanded since then. I talked with another one who it was when I do these events sometimes, then people will show up, dead people, and their energy. And that was the first thing I talked to my guides about when I started channeling was, I don't want to see dead people. I think that's a common thing. I don't want to see dead people. And they said, they're not dead, they're energy. Oh, okay, well, that makes it just fine. In other words, I didn't want to get the images of what happened when somebody died. If it was an unpleasant death, if it was something that was traumatic, I really didn't want to be called into that situation, because some mediums do. They go and they re-experience the entire thing. I didn't want to be put through that. I did work with somebody who had a loss that involved crime, and I saw some of it, but I didn't need to see any more. Just enough to be able to connect some dots and help the father go through it. So those kinds of things happen. You don't really ask for it. You just become a piece of the equation. And if you can find information out, then that's what you do. And you go forward and you leave it. Those are bags. That's baggage again. And it can be exhausting. And you have to tell them, you have to put yourself, I guess, with boundaries, on a plane where you are shielded from some of that. And it comes with understanding more about how energy works. And again, going back and learning the difference between males and females was extremely helpful, because then I didn't feel like it was an intrusion. It was just, that's the way it works, and to give that space, allow that space. So with that, then, having those experiences of having other entities, knowing that they could enter, then understanding that we are so much more vulnerable as human beings than we realize. And so right now, with all the talk about the UFOs and ETs and wanting to go explore space and all that, we haven't even figured out telepathy. And that's like, a part of that's a part of the package. And we don't have a clue about ghosts, or at least we're not talking about them in a way that helps us validate and understand this is a natural part of our experience and life. So there are some really big keys that come with this expanded awareness, expanded consciousness, and you understand that other things, other beings, other life forms also have consciousness and have intelligence and wisdom, and we have so much more to learn with that. So right now, what is happening on the larger scale, if you look at the planet, and this is where my guidance has come from, preparing for this time, which the Native Americans and other indigenous cultures have been saying, we're going to experience some really, really rocky roads. I think they put it a little bit more dramatic. And that's what's happening right now. The latest one I saw was a seventh generation. We are the seventh generation, and I need to post that. That's been out for a while, but I need to post that. I think he came out with it in 2013 or a little earlier, but that's the warning. Well, then the Hopi prophecy's been out. Anyway, so that's the warning that what's happening right now worldwide on a global scale is a part of the planet basically reconciling and forcing us to choose what our priorities are as beings, as stewards, as guardians of this space, this planet. So the first word they gave me was there was going to be a culling. And I didn't want to write it. Again, this is the censorship. This is when that guidance comes in, and it's like, do I want to put this word out? Do I want to add it? I was really conflicted. So I used a different term. And I'm even choking up as I'm talking about this because it's difficult. But the term, I think it was just going to be a hardship, a rocky road or something. Now, the Native Americans have used this term cleansing. Well, beyond the term I got, which was a culling, there was another word. It's expanded from that. And the analogy, though, makes sense because it says it's if you consider the planet like a dog, and a dog has fleas. Right now, things are happening that are the equivalent of the planet getting rid of fleas. And the expanded term is purge. Now remember, things are happening on more than one level. That level that I saw from the ceiling, the level that I saw as the light body above my physical form, and the body that was me laying on the bed during meditation. So I'm equating this to what's happening right now with us on the planet. There's more than one plane that is affected. That's what you get with channeling. Okay, is it something I want to hear? Is it something I want to say? Is it something I want to share? It's something I want to consider. With some of these things that come through, it's a way of giving us a context, an analogy, a picture, and saying, don't take it personal, don't judge, don't anticipate that this is going to be a long-term and permanent situation. Just know, this too shall pass. Right now, there are going to be some situations that are incredibly uncomfortable and force us to make decisions and change from our shall we say, planned journey, course. It's a reset. And this reset involves hardship of some kind. It also involves personal choice, personal accountability. If you understand you are multidimensional and your consciousness is operating at all times beyond this form, connect with that, and you're always home. The video is on Talking to Nightlights WordPress. And that shows you the nightlight. Very innocuous, very simple, more than what it seems. Stay curious, stay safe, be well. I'll put some links in the description for this show. Next show on tap is How to Be a Mermaid. Thanks for listening.